All right, it's time for another 5 minutes. Very excited today from Sports Illustrated, Baseball America. You know him also from the Joe Sheehan Baseball newsletter. Joe Sheehan is here. Thanks so much for being here, Joe.
Good to be here, Eric. Glad to be supporting the new project. I'm excited for you.
Oh, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And what's our topic going to be today? Obviously, you write a lot about baseball. I get the feeling we're going to go along those lines.
Well, I really wish I was able to talk about Mike Trout or Cody Bellinger or all the great players that are in the game today. But of course, there's no baseball being played. So right now you've got the MLB Players Association and MLB and the owners trying to figure out how to bring the game back. They're trading offers back and forth. And as we speak, they're evaluating the offers, trying to figure out how to bring our game back.
Boy, this seems like a never-ending battle. Hopefully it comes to a good conclusion here sometime soon so we can see baseball. All right, 5 minutes going up on the clock. Here we go. So the latest proposal, as we know, is the 89-game proposal that the Players Association just pitched the other day. I don't know whether or not the league is going to like this. What were your thoughts initially when we saw this proposal come out just a few days ago?
Well, the players have moved significantly off their initial offer, which was a 114-game season with prorated pay. And with all of the details of these offers back and forth, 114 games, 89 games, 48 games, the key thing to remember is that it's a one-issue negotiation. It's largely about the issue of prorated pay. If you go back to March and April, the players and the owners agreed that instead of the players being owed their entire salaries for the year, which of course wouldn't be reasonable, the players agreed that whatever season was played, they would take that percentage of salary. So if it was an 81-game season, 50% of a baseball season, they would get 50% of their salaries. Buried in the agreement was a clause that's come under some dispute about whether there would be an additional negotiation in the case of having to play without fans in the stands. That's what they're fighting over right now. The owners have come back to the players and say, hey, look, without fans in the stands, we can't give you prorated pay. We would like you to take less than that. So right now, it's a one-issue negotiation with a lot of details being moved around it. The owners have offered, we'll play this much of a season for this much pay, or we'll give you this much of a pool of money for you to distribute. But it all comes back to the owners offering about $1.4 billion in salary to the players, regardless of the length of the season. And that's about a third of what the players would make in a full year.
Wow, and I also saw that somewhere in that agreement, too, that the players were looking for some compensation, too, for the minor league players as well. Do you think them looking for that 100% of a prorated salary plus the compensation for the minor leagues would make the owners balk at this deal perhaps even further?
The number is not that great. I believe players asked for both money for minor leaguers and money to support social justice issues. I think the total was $5 million. In a negotiation of this size, that's not likely going to be a deal breaker. It did feel a little opportunistic for me, more about the public relations aspects. There are a lot of people right now who are disappointed in the Major League Baseball Players Association for not negotiating harder for salaries and benefits for the minor leaguers. Legally, they're prescribed from doing that in terms of as a bargaining unit, but I think a lot of people would like to see minor leaguers treated and paid better. So this is an opportunity for the players to maybe get the press and public on their side.
In your latest edition of the Joe Sheehan Baseball newsletter, you mentioned that timing really had a lot to do with it and why the MLB was kind of in a rough position when it came to comparing them to the NFL, NBA, and NHL. One of the quotes that you put in there I thought was great says, it's getting mad at your 11th grader for taking a long time on his trigonometry homework by comparing him to your third grader who has completed her multiplication tables already. It's not apples and oranges, it's apples and Volkswagens. What did you mean by that, and how is MLB in a rougher position than the other three major sports?
You go back to March 12th when everything shut down. The NBA had played about 75 to 80% of its season. The NHL had played about 80% of its season. So the players had gotten most of their pay for the year. The NHL, actually, the league paid the players' last 3 paychecks. Now, their collective bargaining agreement has some clauses. They'll probably claw some of that back. But in terms of the problem facing the league and the players in those leagues, it was much smaller. It was everybody's gotten their money. The teams have had full arenas for 4 or 5 months. They've gotten most of their cable television contracts. Major League Baseball, the owners were faced with a season full of empty stadiums. The players hadn't been paid since October, in some cases September for players who weren't in the playoffs. So it was a much more complicated question. If you look at how the NHL and NBA have solved their problems, They've left some or all of the non-playoff teams on the side. They've set up these bubble-type environments, whether it's Disney Resort in Florida. I know the NHL is still working on where they're going to play. MLB doesn't have that option. When they proposed playing the season in bubbles in Arizona and Florida, well, you can't leave 8 teams behind. You also need a lot more players to play the baseball regular season. You also play baseball mostly outside. And I don't think you can really play baseball outside every day in Arizona in July and August. So all of these things made baseball's problems much more complicated than what the NBA and NHL has faced. We've seen a lot of coverage of this, Eric, say, oh, well, the NBA and NHL got their stuff together. Why can't? And it's largely because the problem is just that much more difficult.
Right. We're down to our final 15 seconds. Do you think we're going to see a season in 2020?
I think we'll see a small season. I'm not sure we'll get through it entirely.
Oh, goodness. I hope we get these guys back on the field and get to see something soon. It would be something that we need around here, in the very, very near future. And with that, we've hit 5 minutes. Joe Sheehan, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, you can go to joesheehan.com and subscribe to the Joe Sheehan Baseball newsletter. Thanks so much, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Eric.